The ship was dying. Captain knew this in her bones as she stood on the bridge and watched the warning lights flash red across every console. The galactic survey vessel Whisper of Dawn had survived many dangers in its long service to the hegemony, but today it was barely holding together. Smoke drifted through the corridors. The air recyclers made a terrible grinding noise that hurts ears. Half the lights had failed, leaving the bridge in a dim glow that made everything look like a bad dream. Through the crack, could see the endless darkness of space stretching out before them. They were lost, they were dying, and there was nothing she could do about it. "Captain," said her first officer. He was tall even for a with silver-blue skin that had turned pale from exhaustion. His hands shook as he worked the damaged navigation console. "I have finished the damage report." Turned to look at him. She did not want to hear what he had to say, but she was the captain. She had to listen. "Tell me," she said. His voice was heavy with despair. "Primary engines are destroyed. Secondary engines are operating at 12%. Life support will fail in 3 days, maybe 4 if we reduce all crew activity to minimum levels." He paused. "The hull has 17 breaches. We have sealed them with emergency patches, but they will not hold forever." Closed her eyes. 3 days. That was all they had. 3 days of air, and then her crew of 43 souls would suffocate in the cold darkness of space. She thought about how they had come to this moment. The Whisper of Dawn had been part of a convoy carrying supplies to the outer colonies. 20 ships, all traveling together for safety. Then they had appeared. There were monsters. That was the only word could think of to describe them. Their ships were black as death, and they showed no mercy to anyone they encountered. They had attacked the convoy without warning, without reason. Plasma fire had lit up the darkness as ship after ship exploded into flames. Had watched her sister vessels die. She had heard the screams over the radio as crews burned alive or were pulled into the void. 17 ships gone in less than an hour. Only 3 had managed to escape and did not know if the other 2 had survived. She had ordered an emergency jump into uncharted space. It was a desperate move. Jumping without proper calculations was incredibly dangerous, but staying meant certain death. So they had jumped, and somehow they had survived. Now they drifted through an unknown solar system, far from any help, far from any hope. "What about our location?" asked. "Do you know where we are?" Nodded slowly. "We are in an uncharted system. Yellow star, 8 planets. I found a reference to this place in the old hegemony records." He brought up a display on his console. "The 3rd planet from the sun is habitable. Nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere. Large amounts of water. The records say it contains intelligent life." Felt a small spark of hope. Intelligent life meant civilization. Perhaps they could find help. "What do the records say about these beings?" she asked. Scrolled through the ancient files. The last survey was conducted over 200 years ago. At that time, the natives were classified as pre-contact, early industrial. They had discovered basic radio communication but had not yet achieved space travel. He looked up at. They were considered too primitive for contact. The hope in his heart faded. A primitive species could not help them. They needed engineers, mechanics, advanced technology. A world that had barely discovered radio waves could offer none of these things. But the planet had water. It had air. Perhaps they could land and scavenge raw materials to make repairs. It was not much of a plan, but it was better than floating in space and waiting to die. "Set a course for the 3rd planet," ordered. "Take us into orbit." The Whisper of Dawn limped toward the blue-green world. As they approached, stared at it through the... It was beautiful, she had to admit. Swirls of white clouds covered vast blue oceans. Green and brown landmasses spread across its surface. It looked peaceful, quiet, untouched by the wars and violence that plagued the rest of the galaxy. Then the sensors began to beep. Frowned at his console. "Captain, I am detecting strange readings from the planet." "What kind of readings?" "Radio signals," said slowly. "Millions of them, complex signals covering every frequency." He adjusted the sensors. "And there is more. I am detecting energy signatures on the surface. Power plants, electromagnetic emissions, and he stopped, his eyes widening. "What is it?" demanded. "Spacecraft," whispered. "There are spacecraft in orbit around this planet, dozens of them." Felt her heart stop. That was impossible. The records said these beings were primitive. They should not have spacecraft. They should not have any of this. "Show me," she ordered. Put the image on the main, stared in disbelief. The planet was surrounded by artificial satellites, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, spinning in careful orbits, and among them she could see larger structures, space stations, research platforms, and ships, real ships moving under their own power. "This cannot be right," said. "The records said they were primitive." "The records are 200 years old," reminded her. "Perhaps they have advanced." Advanced was an understatement. In 200 years, this species had gone from basic radio to space travel. That was an impossible rate of progress. That had taken thousands of years to achieve the same development. What kind of beings could advance so quickly? Before could think about this question, the communications console crackled to life. "Unknown vessel," said a voice in a language did not recognize. The ship's translation system struggled for a moment, then the words became clear. "Unknown vessel, this is Earth Orbital Command. We have detected your approach. You appear to be damaged. Do you require assistance?" Stared at the console. They were offering help. These unknown beings, these impossibly fast developers, were offering to help a stranger from the stars. He looked back at her. Neither of them knew what to say. "Unknown vessel," the voice repeated. "Please respond. We are prepared to render assistance if needed." Took a deep breath. They had no choice. They were dying, and these beings were offering a hand. Whether that hand would save them or destroy them, she did not know, but she was out of options. She pressed the communication button. "Earth Orbital Command, this is Captain of the Hegemony Vessel Whisper of Dawn. We are badly damaged. We require assistance. Please help us." There was a moment of silence. Then the voice returned, warmer now, filled with something that sounded almost like excitement. "Captain, welcome to Earth. Help is on the way. Please hold your position and prepare to receive a boarding party. We will bring everything you need." Ended the transmission and sank back into her command chair. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to hope. She did not know that this moment would change the galaxy forever. The human shuttle was small but elegant. Watched through the observation window as it approached the Whisper of Dawn with careful precision. The craft moved smoothly, adjusting its course with tiny bursts from its engines. Whoever was flying it knew exactly what they were doing. Had gathered her senior officers in the docking bay, stood at her right side, his hand resting on his sidearm. Behind them waited the ship's doctor and the chief engineer. All of them were nervous. None of them knew what to expect from these strange beings called humans. "Remember," said quietly, "we are guests here. These beings have offered us help. We will treat them with respect and caution. Do not make any aggressive moves unless I give the order." Her officers nodded. The shuttle locked onto the docking port with a soft clunk. Air hissed as the pressure equalized. Then the airlock door slowly opened. The humans stepped out. There were 5 of them. They were shorter than, with rounded faces and soft skin in shades of brown and pink. They had no scales, no protective membranes, nothing that suggested they were built for survival. To eyes, they looked fragile, almost delicate. But their eyes were sharp, alert, intelligent, and they moved with confidence as if they had walked onto alien ships many times before. The human at the front was a female with black hair pulled back tightly from her face. She wore a dark uniform with symbols on the shoulders. Her eyes scanned the docking bay quickly, taking in every detail. Then she stepped forward and extended her hand. "Captain," she said. Her voice was translated through a small device on her wrist. "I am commander of the Republic of Korea Space Forces. We are here to help." Stared at the extended hand. She did not know what the gesture meant. Was it a greeting, a threat, a sign of submission? Leaned close and whispered, "I believe it is a gesture of friendship, Captain. They touch hands as a greeting." Hesitated, then reached out and took the human's hand. The skin was warm, soft. The grip was firm but not aggressive. Shook's hand twice, then released it. "Thank you for coming," said carefully. "We are in great need of assistance." Smiled. It was a strange expression, the corners of her mouth turning upward, her eyes crinkling slightly, but somehow understood that it meant warmth, friendliness, welcome. "That is why we are here," said. "Please show us your ship, tell us what you need." The next few hours were unlike anything had ever experienced. The humans spread through the whisper of dawn like water flowing into cracks. They asked endless questions. They touched everything, examined everything, took notes on small electronic devices they carried with them. A young engineer named spent 2 hours crawling through the engine compartment, shining a light into every corner. He was thin and wore thick glasses on his face. Did not understand why humans would need such devices when technology could easily correct vision problems. But she said nothing, watching as he worked. "Your plasma conduits are completely burned out," announced, emerging from the compartment covered in grease and soot. "The cascade failure started here and spread through the entire system." He pointed at a diagram on his tablet. "We can fix this." The chief engineer shook his head. "The damage is too severe. We would need to replace the entire conduit network. That requires specialized materials and equipment that we do not have." Grinned. It was a wide expression that showed his teeth, and for a moment felt a flash of alarm. In many species, showing teeth was a threat display, but she quickly realized this was another human expression of happiness. "We can make the materials," said, "and I think we can do more than just repair your conduits. We can improve them." "Improve them?" asked, clearly skeptical. "These conduits were designed by the finest engineers in the hegemony. They represent centuries of development." Nodded respectfully. "I am sure they do, but I have some ideas that might help them work even better, if you will allow me to try." While the engineers worked, another human approached Captain. She was a young female with a kind face, carrying a bag filled with medical supplies. Her name was, and she was a doctor. Captain said, "I have been observing your crew. They are exhausted, malnourished, dehydrated. When did they last have proper food and rest?" Felt shame creep up her neck. "We have been rationing supplies since the attack. 3 days ago, we reduced food to minimum levels. Water as well." She paused. "We did not know if we would survive long enough for it to matter." His expression changed. Something passed through her eyes that did not fully understand. Sadness, perhaps, or anger, but not at the situation. "I have brought supplies," said. "Food, water, medicine. More is coming from the surface. But first I want you to try something." She reached into her bag and pulled out a container. Steam rose from the top, carrying a strange, rich smell. "What is that?" asked. "Coffee," said. "A drink from my planet. It will help you feel more alert, more focused." "It is. How do I explain? It is a human tradition. When we are tired, when we are struggling, we drink coffee. It gives us strength." Took the container carefully. The liquid inside was dark brown, almost black. It did not look appetizing, but she did not want to insult this human who had come so far to help. She took a small sip. The taste was bitter, strange, unlike anything she had ever experienced, but moments later she felt something happen in her body. Her fatigue began to lift. Her thoughts became clearer. Energy flowed through her veins like electricity. "This is remarkable," said, staring at the container. "What is in this drink?" Laughed. "Just a bean, a seed from a plant that grows on our world. We roast it, grind it, and add hot water. Nothing special." Nothing special. Drank more of the coffee, feeling strength return to her body with each sip. These humans were strange indeed. They considered a drink that could restore energy and clarity to be nothing special. As the hours passed, more humans arrived. Technicians, engineers, doctors, soldiers. They came in shuttles loaded with equipment and supplies. They set up workstations throughout the ship. They laughed and talked and argued among themselves in rapid bursts of language that the translation devices struggled to follow. Commander found standing near a viewport, watching human ships move through space around them. "Your people work very hard," observed. They have only just met us, and yet they give so much effort to help us. Why? Considered the question. Because you needed help, she said simply, and because helping is what we try to do. But you gain nothing from this. We cannot pay you. We cannot offer you anything of value. Smiled again, that warm expression that was beginning to appreciate. Captain, you have already given us something of incredible value. You have proven that we are not alone in the universe. For my people, that is worth more than any payment. Did not know how to respond. In her experience, every species wanted something. Every offer of help came with hidden costs. But these humans seemed genuinely happy just to help, just to meet new beings from the stars. Perhaps, she thought, they were more advanced than she had realized. Late that night, when most of the crew had finally gotten proper rest and food, sat in her quarters reviewing the reports. The humans had accomplished more in 12 hours than she would have thought possible. Hull breaches were being repaired. Power systems were coming back online. The air recyclers had stopped making that terrible grinding noise. They were going to survive. Thanks to these strange, soft, coffee-drinking beings called humans, the whisper of dawn would fly again. But could not shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. These humans were capable of things that explanation. They learned too quickly, worked too efficiently, cared too deeply about strangers. Whatever happened next, sensed that meeting humanity would change everything. She finished her coffee and began to plan for tomorrow. 3 weeks had passed since the humans first came aboard the Whisper of Dawn. In that time, had watched her ship transform into something she barely recognized. The vessel that had limped into Earth's orbit as a dying wreck was now stronger, faster, and more powerful than it had ever been. The changes had happened gradually at first. The human engineers repaired the hull breaches with a new kind of material they called titanium carbon composite. It was lighter than hull plating but 3 times stronger. When tested it, he found that it could withstand plasma fire that would have melted standard armor. Then they fixed the engines. The young engineer with the thick glasses worked alongside for 16 hours straight. They rebuilt the plasma conduits from scratch, using a design that combined principles with human innovations. When they finished, the engines produced nearly 4 times their original power output. I do not understand, admitted to one evening. He looked tired but excited, like a child who had discovered a new toy. Their technology is younger than ours by thousands of years, but they think differently. They see connections that we missed, solutions that never occurred to us. Nodded slowly. She had noticed the same thing. The humans approached problems with a strange kind of creativity. They did not accept limitations. When something seemed impossible, they simply looked for another way. The most dramatic changes came to the ship's weapon systems. Had not asked for weapons upgrades. Her ship was a survey vessel, not a warship. It carried defensive systems to protect against pirates and minor threats, but it was not designed for real combat. The attack by the A had proven this in the worst possible way. But the humans had noticed the damage to the weapons arrays, and they had decided to help. A weapons specialist named arrived on the ship during the 2nd week. He was a quiet man with calloused hands and a serious face. He spent 3 days studying the weapons technology without saying a word. Then he called a meeting. Your energy weapons are excellent, said, displaying diagrams on a holographic screen. The plasma projectors are well designed, but they have one weakness. He pointed at the power consumption charts. They drain too much energy. In a prolonged battle, you would run out of power before defeating a determined enemy. We know this, said. It is a limitation of plasma technology. All species face the same problem. Smiled slightly. My people have a different approach. We use kinetic weapons, projectiles. Frowned. Projectile weapons are primitive. They cannot penetrate energy shields. Normal projectile weapons cannot, agreed. But these are not normal. He changed the display to show a new kind of weapon. It was long and sleek, with massive electromagnetic coils running along its length. We call this It uses electromagnetic force to accelerate metal projectiles to extreme velocities, approximately 30 kilometers per second. The room went silent, did the math in her head. At that speed, a solid piece of metal would carry more energy than most plasma weapons, and energy shields were designed to block energy, not physical matter. This would work against the shields, she said slowly. Nodded. We believe so. Based on the data you provided about their technology, their shields should be unable to stop a kinetic impact at this velocity. The projectile would simply pass through. Over the following days, and his team installed 12 platforms on the Whisper of Dawn. They also added missile launchers, point defense systems, and something they called EMP generators. By the time they finished, the survey vessel had more firepower than most cruisers. Examined the new weapons with wonder and a little fear. This ship could fight now, he said. Really fight. We could challenge a destroyer. Perhaps even win, added with his usual grin. Stood in the upgraded command center, looking at the displays that showed her transformed ship. She should have felt grateful. She was grateful, but she also felt something else. A creeping worry that had grown stronger with each passing day. She found Commander in the observation lounge, drinking coffee and watching the Earth turn slowly below them. Your people have been incredibly generous, said, sitting down across from the human commander. More generous than we deserve, but I must ask you something. Looked at her with those sharp, intelligent eyes. Ask. Why weapons? We came to you for repairs, not for war, yet your people have turned my ship into a fighting vessel. Why? Was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. She placed it on the table between them. A holographic image appeared, showing the fleet that had attacked convoy. We analyzed the data from your ship's sensors, said. They did not just attack you randomly. They were part of a larger fleet, a war fleet, and according to their trajectory, they are heading toward you. Felt cold spread through her body. What are you saying? They are planning an invasion of space. Based on our calculations, they will reach your outer colonies in approximately 40 days. You're in about 60. That is impossible, whispered. The hegemony would have detected such a fleet. They would have sent warnings. Shook her head sadly. Your convoy was not attacked by chance, Captain. You were attacked because you were witnesses. They did not want anyone to escape and warn your people. They thought they had destroyed all of you. His hands began to shake. Her people were in danger. Her family, everyone she had ever known was about to face an invasion, and they had no idea it was coming. I must warn them, she said, standing up quickly. The ship is repaired now. We can jump to space and spread the alert. You could, agreed. But the fleet is faster than your ship, even with the upgrades. By the time you reach your and organize a defense, they will already be attacking your outer colonies. Thousands will die in the first wave. Sank back into her chair. Despair washed over her like a dark wave. She had survived the attack. She had found help. But it was all meaningless if her people were about to be destroyed. There is another option, said quietly. Looked up. What option? My people could help you stop them. Stop them? They have 200 warships. You cannot possibly fight that many. Leaned forward, her eyes burning with determination. Captain, you do not know what humanity is capable of. We have spent our entire history fighting wars. We have perfected the art of warfare in ways that other species cannot imagine. Give us time, and we will build a fleet that can face the How much time? 3 weeks, maybe less. Stared at her. You cannot build a war fleet in 3 weeks. That is impossible. Smiled, but there was no humor in it, only fierce resolve. Captain, impossible is just a word we use for things we have not done yet. She stood up and offered her hand in that human greeting. Let us show you what humanity can do when we have something worth fighting for. Took her hand. She still did not fully believe, but she had learned enough about humans to know that they did not make promises lightly. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humans went to war. Had not believed it possible. Even after everything she had seen, everything the humans had accomplished on her ship, she had not truly believed they could build a war fleet in 3 weeks. It simply went against everything she knew about shipbuilding, logistics, and military organization. But the humans had done it. She stood on the observation deck of the Soul's Defiance, the flagship of the newly assembled Earth Defense Fleet. Around her, stretching across the darkness of space, 63 warships held formation. They had come from nations all across the planet. The names were strange to her ears: Valor of Soul, Beijing Dragon, American Hope, Mumbai Star, Sydney Thunder, and dozens more. Each one represented a different country, a different culture, a different people. And yet they flew together as one fleet, one force, one humanity. Admiral stood beside her, watching his fleet with quiet pride. He was an older man with hair at his temples and deep lines around his eyes. He moved slowly, carefully, like someone who had learned patience through long experience. But his mind was sharp, and his tactical knowledge was extraordinary. "How did you do this?" asked him. "3 weeks ago you had no warships. Now you have a fleet that could challenge the smiled slightly. "We had the ships, Captain. We just needed to change them." He explained that humans had been building spacecraft for decades. Commercial vessels, research platforms, cargo ships, mining operations. The structures were already there. What they lacked was weapons and military systems. So the nations of Earth had worked together, faster than anyone had ever worked before, to transform their civilian fleet into a fighting force. Factories that made cars and electronics switched to producing weapons and armor. Thousands of engineers worked around the clock, sleeping in shifts, eating meals at their workstations. Entire populations donated resources, money, time. Volunteers lined up at recruitment centers, eager to crew the new warships. "We sent out a call for help," said, "and our people answered. Every nation, every culture, every belief. They set aside their differences and worked together, because they understood that something bigger was at stake." Shook her head in wonder. In the hegemony, such cooperation would take years of negotiation, decades perhaps. Your people achieved it in days. "Humans are complicated," admitted. "We fight among ourselves. We disagree about many things. But when we face a common enemy, when something threatens all of us, we become one people. We become united." He paused. "It is perhaps our greatest strength." The fleet was not elegant, could see that clearly. The ships were rough, patched together, covered in welding marks and hasty repairs. They did not have the sleek beauty of cruisers or the terrifying symmetry of a destroyers. They looked like what they were: civilian vessels converted into weapons of war in desperate haste. But they bristled with weapons. Every ship carried missile launchers and energy weapons designed from technology. Point defense systems covered their hulls. Their engines, upgraded with the same improvements the humans had made to the Whisper of Dawn, burned bright and powerful. And the crews had met many of them over the past weeks: pilots who flew with reckless courage, engineers who could repair critical systems in the middle of combat, soldiers who trained for hours without rest, driven by determination and caffeine. They were not experienced in space warfare, but they learned quickly and they never gave up. Commander found in her quarters later that day. The human woman carried 2 cups of coffee and handed one to the captain. "You have been quiet," observed. "What troubles you?" Took the coffee, inhaling the bitter aroma that had become strangely comforting over the past weeks. "I am thinking about what you are all giving up. These ships, these crews. Many of them will not come back. You know this." "Yes," said simply, "we know." "And yet you still go. You still fight for people you have never met, for a world you have never seen. Why?" Sat down across from, her expression was serious, thoughtful. "When you arrived at Earth, you were desperate, dying. You came to us as strangers, not knowing if we would help you or harm you, but you trusted us. You asked for help." She leaned forward. "In human culture, there is a concept we call honor. It means different things to different people, but at its core, it means keeping your promises and protecting those who cannot protect themselves. You asked for our help. We gave it. That created a bond between us, and we do not abandon those we are bonded to." Felt something warm spread through her chest. It was not the coffee. It was something deeper, something she had not felt in a long time. Hope, perhaps, or gratitude. "Your people are remarkable," she said quietly. Smiled, "We are just doing what is right, that is all." The jump drives began to power up across the fleet. Could feel the vibration through the deck plates as massive amounts of energy flowed into the systems that would carry them across the stars. In a few hours, they would emerge near the gate, the hyperspace corridor that led to the outer reaches of the hegemony. That was where the fleet would pass. That was where they would make their stand. Admiral addressed the fleet through a system-wide broadcast. His voice was calm and steady, like a rock in a storm. "This is Admiral to all vessels. In a few hours, we will face an enemy that has never been defeated in battle. They have destroyed fleets, conquered worlds, and brought suffering to billions. They believe they are invincible." He paused, and his voice grew harder. "They are wrong. Today they will learn what humanity is capable of. Today they will learn that we do not run. We do not surrender. We do not abandon those who need us. Today we show the galaxy that humans stand with their friends." Across the fleet, crews cheered. The sound echoed through corridors and engine rooms, through mess halls and weapons bays. Thousands of voices raised together in defiance. "All ships prepare for jump," ordered. "May we meet again on the other side. Fleet, engage." The jump drives activated. Space twisted around them, stars stretching into lines of light. One by one, the ships of Earth vanished into faster-than-light travel. Watched through the viewport as reality folded around her. She thought about her family, the millions of who had no idea what was coming. She thought about the humans flying beside her, brave fools who had chosen to die for strangers. She finished her coffee and went to the bridge. The battle was coming. Somewhere in the cargo hold of the Soul's Defiance had prepared a special package. 300 kilograms of coffee beans, carefully sealed and preserved, enough for a victory celebration. She was determined that they would need it. The fleet emerged from hyperspace expecting an easy journey. 200 warships, their hulls black as the void between stars, their weapons charged with the stolen technology of a dozen conquered civilizations. They had destroyed 17 vessels without losing a single ship. They had crushed resistance movements on 100 worlds. They believed themselves invincible. They were not prepared for what waited at the gate. The human fleet struck first. Without warning, without diplomacy, without hesitation. 63 ships erupted from their hiding positions among the asteroids, and the darkness of space lit up with fire. Rounds screamed across the void at 30 kilometers per second. The energy shields, designed to stop plasma and laser fire, flickered uselessly as solid metal tore through them. The first salvo struck the lead destroyer before anyone on the command ship even understood what was happening. Armor cracked. Fuel lines ruptured. The ship exploded in a ball of orange flame. On the bridge of the Soul's Defiance, Admiral watched the battle unfold with cold precision. His voice was calm as he issued orders, directing his fleet with the expertise of a master strategist. "All ships concentrate fire on their command vessel. Break their coordination." The human fleet responded instantly. Missiles launched in swarms, their guidance systems locking onto the largest a ship. Point defense weapons from the enemy vessels tried to intercept them, but there were too many. Dozens got through, slamming into the command ship's shields and hull. They finally began to fight back. Plasma cannons lit up across their fleet, pouring fire at the human ships. The Soul's Defiance shuddered as several hits struck her armor. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. "Hull breach on Deck 7, reported a crew member. "Sealing now." "Keep firing," ordered. "We can take it." The battle spread across thousands of kilometers of space. Human ships darted between the larger destroyers, using their smaller size and greater speed to avoid the worst of the enemy fire. They struck and pulled back, struck again, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. Captain stood on the bridge of the Whisper of Dawn, fighting alongside the fleet that had saved her life. Her ship's new weapons performed beyond her wildest hopes. Each round that struck a vessel sent ripples of satisfaction through her heart. "Target the engine section of that cruiser," she ordered. "Disable their movement." The guns fired. The cruiser's engines exploded. The massive vessel began to drift, helpless, as human fighters swarmed around it like angry insects. But they were not easy enemies. They adapted, reorganized, began to use their superior numbers to overwhelm individual human ships. The Tokyo Rising took too many hits and broke apart, her crew lost to the void. The Lagos Pride lost engine power and drifted out of formation. The Moscow Hammer held her ground until plasma fire melted through her bridge, killing everyone inside. Commander's voice crackled over the communications channel. "Captain, we have created an opening. Take your ship through. We will hold the line." Looked at the tactical display. The path was clear. She could escape, reach space, bring warning, but it would mean leaving the humans behind. "I cannot abandon you," she said. "You can and you will," replied. There was no anger in her voice, only determination. "Your people need to know what is coming. They need to prepare. Our sacrifice means nothing if they'll win in the end." "But you will die." "Maybe," his voice softened slightly. "But we knew that when we came here, we accepted it. This is what humans do, Captain. We fight for what matters, even when the odds are against us. Especially when the odds are against us." The battle raged around them. Another human ship died, then another. But for every human vessel lost, 3 ships burned. The enemy fleet was shrinking, its formation broken, its confidence shattered. Admiral made a decision that would be remembered for centuries. He ordered his remaining ships to form a defensive wall between the and the gate. They would hold the line no matter what. They would buy time with their lives. The fighting became desperate. Human pilots flew their fighters into suicidal close-range attacks, ramming damaged vessels to ensure their destruction. Engineers worked in burning engine rooms, keeping weapons online with their bare hands. Soldiers stood at airlocks with simple rifles, ready to repel boarders. 7 hours. That was how long the battle lasted. 7 hours of fire and death and unimaginable courage. When it ended, the invasion fleet had been reduced to scattered debris. Of their 200 warships, only 12 escaped into hyperspace. They would carry word of their defeat back to their empire. They would tell stories of the strange species called humans who fought like demons and never gave up. But humanity had paid a terrible price. 19 ships were destroyed, over 3,000 lives lost. The Soul's Defiance survived, barely, her hull torn open in a dozen places. Commander had a piece of shrapnel in her arm and refused to leave the bridge until the last ship was gone. The Whisper of Dawn did not flee through the gate, had ordered her crew to stay and fight alongside their human friends. She did not regret it. In the aftermath of the battle, as rescue ships moved through the debris searching for survivors, walked through the damaged corridors of the Soul's Defiance, she found Admiral sitting alone in his quarters, staring at a list of names. The names of everyone who had died under his command. "You won," said quietly. Shook his head. "We survived. That is not the same thing." He looked up at her with tired eyes. 3,000 people will not go home to their families. 3,000 people who volunteered to die for strangers from the stars. They will be remembered as heroes. Heroes? Smiled sadly. They were engineers and farmers and teachers and soldiers. They were parents and children and friends. They were ordinary people who did an extraordinary thing. He paused. "That is what humanity is, Captain. We are not special. We are not chosen. We are just stubborn enough to keep fighting when sensible species would surrender." Sat down beside him. She did not have words for what she was feeling. Gratitude, grief, awe, all of these things mixed together into something she could not name. "The hegemony will never forget this," she said finally. "We will tell our children about the humans who came from nowhere and fought for us. We will remember." Nodded, then it was worth it. 1 year later, Earth joined the Galactic Council. Not as a junior member, but as a full partner. Human engineers spread across worlds, improving technology and sharing knowledge. Human soldiers trained with hegemony forces, teaching tactics that emphasized speed, adaptation, and unconventional thinking. And everywhere they went, they brought coffee. Captain returned to Earth once to attend a memorial for the fallen. She stood beside Commander, watching as names were read aloud. Pilots, engineers, soldiers, ordinary people who had given their lives for strangers. I still do not understand, admitted. Why did you help us? Considered the question. Her arm had healed, but she still carried a scar, a reminder of that terrible day at the gate. Because you needed help, she said simply, and helping is what we do. Above them, human and ships patrolled together, guarding a peace that neither could have achieved alone. The galaxy had changed forever, and in coffee shops on 100 worlds, people raised their cups in memory of those who had made it possible. The humans had proven something that day, something important. They had proven that the galaxy was no longer alone. And that was worth everything.